Hello, everyone. Welcome to Naturally Brown Woman. I am Tammy Williams. And today with me is Genesis Castro. She is the network and program manager for the Latino Community Fund of Georgia. Welcome, Genesis. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's definitely a pleasure to have you and to talk about what's going on in the Latino community. With COVID happening and the pandemic, tell me, what have you seen in the Latino community? What have you seen out there in the field?
So we've seen a lot. When the pandemic hit, they closed down a lot of restaurants, they closed down a lot of businesses, and a lot of the businesses that they ended up closing were a lot of the businesses that immigrants, including Latinos, tend to work with, right? So a lot of people lost income for at least a month, right? And then when they opened up again, they had less hours. And to top it all off, if you are an undocumented immigrant, or if you are married to an undocumented immigrant, you didn't get any CARES Act money. You didn't get the stimulus check that a lot of other people received, right? So we saw large portions of the community have a lack of income for an extended period of time and have no income relief from the government. So it was up to a lot of nonprofit organizations, including us and many of our members, to provide that relief. And it was also another issue too, was that because our community was also working in some of the essential jobs, right? So like poultry workers, grocery stores, some of the businesses that stayed open, they were disproportionately affected by the virus. Many immigrants, including Latinos, live in multi-generational households. So we saw, when we did COVID testing with CORE, which is the Community Organized Relief Effort. And what we found was that our positivity rates were higher than the positivity rates that the Department of Public Health for the COVID testing sites that they were having. So the virus really impacted our community financially, and it impacted them health-wise as well.
Yeah. Did you see as a result of the wages lost, the not being able to work, how were you guys able to help meet those needs? I mean, I'm sure it was pretty drastic because many people live from, paycheck to paycheck, that type of thing. So how were you able to address it?
Yeah, so I think one thing that people have been talking about a lot with the pandemic is that it really brought to light issues that already existed, right? So as you mentioned, people were already living paycheck to paycheck. They already didn't really have access to a safety net here in Georgia. Another issue too that we saw was that a lot of organizations were providing COVID relief, but a lot of them had requirements like an ID or documentation or social security number. So what we did is we were able to bring in $1.5 million in grants to be used directly for COVID relief. And that we used that for poultry workers in South Georgia and for member organizations. And we're also able to fundraise $150,000 in food distributions that we did throughout the state of Georgia, and $70,000 was fundraised for us to be able to provide PPE.
Yeah. I know a little bit can go a long way, but what about, is that still enough? I mean, did that cover or?
No, there is still a large need. I think what we saw was that a lot of our partners, right, a lot of our members, they all know each other, right? They're in coordination with each other. What we found is that a lot of them ran out of money, so they had to keep fundraising, but they also had to keep serving the community. And it was not anywhere near the need. I mean, in South Georgia specifically, there's a lot of migrant farm workers, and they were not eligible for the CARES Relief Act. And we were the only ones really providing financial assistance for them down there.
So you guys manage over 30 organizations that you work with or have relationships with that are either Latino-led or Latino-serving members, that serve the Latino community. Let's take a look at this video of some partners going out and distributing masks.
Hola, mi nombre es Yulisa Soto, soy de Fondos Latinos Comunitarios, Georgia. Yo me encuentro en Tifton, Georgia, y el día de hoy vine a donar un poco de mascarillas a unos de los trabajadores que trabajan en la agricultura. Ellos se encuentran trabajando en el tabaco ahorita.
¿Qué tal? Les queremos decir muchas gracias a la financiera por ayudarnos por el COVID-19. Yo que fui afectado, tuve un mes y 3 semanas Simplemente les quiero decir muchas gracias a todos por corazón y esperamos que sigan ayudando a mucha gente que está enferma para que muy pronto pase esto y volvamos a la normalidad. Queremos decirles muchas gracias a todos por corazón.
En la primera, donde dice bye, ahí va a ir. Y ahí puede dejar eso. Y adentro de la bolsita le dejé unos gel antibacterial, mascarillas, información para protección de inmigración y su tarjeta que va a fijar.
So actually, I could hear how grateful, the gentleman there who talked about having COVID for a month and how grateful he was for just, having those masks. So, so glad that team was able to go out and to distribute that, but I understand still more needs to be done, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because when we knew there was a need in South Georgia, right? So we were looking for a local organization we could partner with, but we couldn't find one. So that's why we just ended up hiring 4 navigators who were students from the Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College in Tifton, many of them who come from family workers. We were able to hire them, people from the community, to go out and provide the relief that was needed in the community.
Yeah. And even with COVID, and we're talking about students who are English learners, how is this impacting them? Even with the virtual schooling and for those who've also gone back to the brick and mortar, how has that affected their education?
Yeah, so COVID has definitely increased the disparities that already existed for students of color, including English language learners, right? Georgia, every state is federally mandated to provide instruction to English language learners, but many counties in Georgia don't have a policy explaining how they plan to meet that. And there's also like a limited amount of data available for how those students are doing compared to other students. So I think for many of these students, right, they come from families who by default, if they're an English language learner, their parents are probably an English language learner too, right? So unless the schools were intentional about providing outreach to the families to make sure that they understood about virtual learning and what needed to be done, it was obviously very difficult for parents to get involved in their students' education, especially if they either had COVID or had to go work in risky jobs or were stressed because again, the lack of income, right? So it really, really increased a lot of the stresses that already existed.
Yeah, and some of the things that already existed is, students, because they may have the intellect and can do the work, but because they can't, their English is not as good, quote unquote, they are placed in remedial classes. And unfortunately, some of them really get stuck there, and can't move forward. So that is a tremendous disadvantage. In fact, let's listen to this young lady who shares her story about being an English learner and what she sees.
Hello, my name is Lupita Quesada Orozco, and I am a proud Latina and first generation college student. I am currently a student at Valdosta State University, majoring in elementary education. I am an alumni for the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, the VSU College Assistance Migrant Program, and the HEP/CAMP Association. I currently hold the positions as a VSU Camp Mentor and a contractor with the Latino Community Fund Georgia. I'm only 19 and I hold 2 jobs, 16 credit hours, and still manage to maintain a 4.0 GPA. Now, it has not been easy to work in a system, an institution not built for me, for students like me. Every day is a struggle, every day a new battle. So here I am juggling 2 jobs and 16 credit hours, maintaining a 4.0 GPA. And the struggle has been real since I was a child. Now, we ran away from home as a young girl because of my abusive father, and my mother emerged us into this American schools. We were Spanish speakers, English learners. And English learners in American schools tend to be ignored, tend to be put to the side, tend to be surrounded by students familiar to them. They tend to be tagged along a translator just to keep them away enough for the teacher to continue doing her job. I am here because I want to be an educator. I am here because I grew up in a broken education system. I grew up seeing my peers kept down. I grew up with them being told that they were not good enough, and they believed it because they were stuck in these remedial classes while we were the honor students. The honor students were allowed to level up, but the remedial students, nope. You're just not that good. You're just not that smart. A broken education system.
Wow, what a powerful testimony. Who is tell us about the young lady who was telling the story?
Yeah, so she's actually one of the navigators who we hired, right, to provide COVID financial assistance in South Georgia. She comes from a family of migrant workers, and she is a student at Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College, which has a large migrant student education program. And she actually wants to be a teacher. And she wants to be the teacher that she didn't have, and be that teacher for other students of color and English language learners. Yeah.
You know what? I want you to address something here. For anybody who would say, well, the primary language is English, and, it's their responsibility to learn that type of thing like that.
Mm-hmm.
Address that.
So what I would say to that is that, again, the United States does not have an official language. And every school is mandated to provide instruction to students, regardless of the language that they speak, right? And what I would also add to that as well is that Georgia benefits, any state benefits when their workforce is bilingual. So by not investing in these students, it's actually putting the state at a disadvantage because they're missing out on the bilingual workforce, which we know is incredibly important now as the country moves toward globalization.
Yeah. So students are students and kids are kids. And so no matter what language is being spoken, whether it's, it doesn't matter, any language, everyone has a right to an education.
Right. And it only benefits everyone when everyone is able to learn English, and accommodate, or how do I say it, acculturate more into the society as a whole when they're able to speak the language.
Yes. I just want to paint a picture of, can you imagine a child sitting in a class that knows the information, that has just learned everything that they can possibly learn, and they can't move forward because of language and not having the right resources, or whether it's a teacher's assistant or somebody there to help them just kind of move to the next grade, how frustrating that could be. So, imagine that. Imagine if that's your child sitting there, and just, or maybe your child could speak English, but they get put in a different class because somebody thinks that they're not as smart, or shouldn't be in the level 2 class and they should stay in the remedial class. How frustrating and angry you would be as a parent. So imagine that's that happening and still happening, and what could be done and what you could possibly even do to help change that system. Getting out to vote. I know you guys have done a big push in getting people out to vote.
Right. Yeah, so the Latino Community Fund of Georgia, again, because our model is mostly working with our member organizations, in 2018, we launched the first collaborative Latino Get Out to Vote effort in the state. It was the first time it was ever done, right? So we worked with partners in the Metro Atlanta area, in Dalton, in Gatesville, in Clark County, and in different parts of Georgia, to do voter registration, to knock on doors, and to encourage Latinos to get out and vote. In 2018, which we know was a very important election year for Georgia, it was our gubernatorial elections, we were able to register 679 people to vote. Awesome. In 2020, which again, this is a presidential election, we were able to register 450 people to register to vote. That's with COVID, right? So that was mostly online outreach. Another thing too is that in 2018, again, as part of our coalition, and because we want to be intentional about protecting voter rights for immigrants in Georgia, we were able to mobilize our member organizations to secure depositions in support of a successful challenge to the state's no match, no vote system, which actually hindered a lot of naturalized citizens for being able to vote. So basically, if you're a naturalized citizen, because Georgia it checks two databases to make sure you're eligible to vote. A lot of people were being flagged as non-citizens, even though they weren't citizens, right? And it was a lot of times, local county board of elections were asking them to come and, check their voter registration status, which was an additional barrier that should not have been done, right? So we were able to get a plaintiff for a lawsuit, and we were able to get rid of that system through our partnerships.
Oh, very good. Very good. Yeah. I wanted us to do some myth busters, if you don't mind. Okay.
Yeah.
I want you to just give me the top 3 or top 5 myths when it comes to the Latino community.
Only 3 or 5. Okay.
You said there are so many.
Yeah.
Give me as many as you like. The goal is to educate and, just share. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one myth, which it can be broken down into different myths, is that there's a myth that we're a monolithic community. Latinos are a very diverse community. Some of us are white, some of us are Black, some of us are mixed, right? But I think it's important to realize that we come in all different colors. We are Latino is a necessity, but we all come from different races, right? I think related to that too is we come from different countries with different backgrounds. So things that work with one group of people might not work for other group of people. The Latino population in the South, for example, might be different than the Latino population in the Northeast, right? Which is where my family's from. I was born in New York. Another thing too is that because we are so different, right? In Georgia specifically, a lot of Latinos who are older lack immigration status, right? But there's also a lot of Latinos who do have immigration status, right? Especially the young Latinos. So it's important to recognize that we come, strategies that work for one group might not work for another group. So it's important to know who you're serving, and not just are they Latino, but it's what is their background? So I would say those are the biggest myths. They're the myth too. I think I see this a lot with COVID relief, that our community is helpless, but we're not helpless. Every community has what they need to, every community has what they need to save themselves, right? We don't need other people to save us. We need other people to invest in us so we can save ourselves. Because we are the ones ultimately who have the answers for the problems that are reaching our community. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. You gave me 2. But thank you so much for sharing that. I know the needs are tremendous. So if someone wanted to help meet those needs, whether donating their time, their resources, how should they contact you?
Yeah, so we can be reached. Again, our website is lcfgeorgia.org, and there you can find information about how to donate, how to sign up to volunteer. Because of COVID, we do have a lot of virtual volunteer opportunities. So we want to encourage everyone to go to our website. If you want to volunteer specifically for Get Out the Vote efforts, which are going to continue even after the runoffs, right? Because of redistricting, and everyone is welcome to sign up at bit.ly/GOTV with LCF.
Genesis, thank you so much for your time, for being here with us, and for sharing the stories and talking about what's happening in a community that just kind of bringing awareness and how we can all help.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I think just hearing your story, I think it makes me think too, how important it is that if we're going to serve a community, that our system as a whole is designed for that community, right? Because the example you gave of a student not being able to understand the language because the school system wasn't built for them, right? That's also what we saw with COVID, right? People trying to navigate COVID testing, people trying to navigate how to get to the emergency room. If the system is not built for them, if they don't provide in-language instruction, if they don't provide additional assistance for people who might not be literate, right? People aren't going to succeed. So yeah, thank you so much for having me here, for allowing me to share a little bit about the work that we do. And I hope that it encourages everyone to be involved and to make sure that whatever field that they're in, that they are fighting to make sure that it's more equitable and accessible to everyone.
To everyone. And as an African-American female, I understand and know about systems that weren't built for us. So we understand that, wholeheartedly, but praise God, we all going to make it through. So thank you again for joining us, Genesis, and we will talk to you soon. This won't be our last conversation.
Thank you.